Do you feel nervous speaking in front of a room full of strangers? Does presenting to your colleagues at work give you butterflies? Do you get tongue-tied meeting new people or going on a first date? You're not alone. Most people fear public speaking. So in this episode, I want to talk about how you can become a more confident speaker and get better at presenting at work and meeting other people. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Life. If you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, that's .me, this is issue number 94, How to Speak with Confidence. And it's all about getting better at speaking, public speaking, presenting, communicating, and it can be for work, and it can be in your private life. I think this even helps in your personal life. I know it's made a big difference for me. And a lot of people do fear public speaking. It's a very common fear. They will avoid networking events, so they won't go to the typical meetups and cocktail parties and all that kind of stuff. They just don't like it, especially if you're introverted like I am. They avoid talking to strangers. They avoid talking on the phone. There's a lot of people that would rather just text than talk. Very few people want to present at conferences. People just don't want to be on panels, speaking on panels, you name it. And you can't avoid it, but it can limit you in life. You can get some training to improve it. And I'm going to talk about that because I used to be the same way. For the longest time, I'd feel sick to my stomach when I had to present at work, when I had to present at a department meeting in front of 20 people or 100, 150 people. Oh my gosh. I hated it. I avoided speaking at conferences. It was the longest time in my career before I spoke at a conference. You know, my heart would race, my palms would sweat. And for me, the thing that happens is my chest gets really tight. So I have all my breath up in my chest and my throat closes up and my voice sounds tight and weak. And it happens all the time. But it's gotten better because I knew this fear of public speaking, this inability to get up in front of a group and talk, it was holding me back in my career. It really was. Because I was watching the people that were good at this, that were comfortable with it. And I was watching them get ahead. They would get promoted. They would be the ones speaking in front of people at the company, and it really made a difference. And it was holding me back in life too, you know? It really does. Just being too nervous to talk to people or to speak to people or meet strangers. So, many, many years ago, and this was way back when I was working at eBay, I took a 2-day course in public speaking. So we had somebody come into the office. He was really good at it. Great educator. Trained us in all aspects of public speaking. So we got a chance to see him go through some of the stuff and kind of model the behavior. We watched each other practicing and going from our initial efforts to becoming much better at it. Gave us a lot of different strategies and tactics and techniques. And it really opened my eyes. It made me immediately better at it. I wouldn't say that I overcame my fear of public speaking in those 2 days. Of course not, right? But it seemed like something that was solvable. And later, same company, I was promoted into management and leadership, and that happened at Yahoo too. And guess what happens? When you get promoted into management and leadership, you do a lot more public speaking, right? You are speaking in front of your team weekly. You're speaking in front of the department at least every month. You're doing presentations to other departments. You're speaking at company-wide events. At Yahoo, I presented during an all-hands and spoke to 10,000 people. And I also had to do a lot of public speaking outside the company. So I got media training. Made a huge difference. Huge difference. I had media training, PR training, so that I could continue to evolve my public speaking abilities. And I ended up speaking at meetings and events in the company every single week. And I was probably speaking at industry events or interviewing with reporters every month. I ended up being the public spokesperson for Search, the search and marketplace group that we had at Yahoo. And so I ended up speaking at conferences every quarter at least, sometimes every month. And I would travel the world, and I had to speak in other offices and things like that. I was on panels, you name it. So I had, it was kind of a trial by fire. And a funny thing happened along the way. You know, I lost my fear of public speaking. I really don't care anymore. I'm not scared of it anymore, which is hard to believe if you know where I came from. And I fell in love with it. I've talked about this before. I fell in love with public speaking, believe it or not. I enjoy it. And I'm on podcast, and I do talks, and I've gone to events with business folks in town, and I just can get up and talk, and it doesn't bother me anymore, which is night and day. So I know it's possible. I was not a good public speaker. I did not like public speaking. I hated it. I'm an introvert. So this isn't natural for me, even though it may seem like I'm not an introvert because I do these podcasts. But the training helped. And so I want to share some of the advice with you. And I'm sharing it in this podcast, the Invincible Life podcast, because I do think it's more than just a career thing. I think it's more than just a business thing. Being able to speak and communicate well and to be confident, it impacts every aspect of your life. It really does. So I put together, it came out to be 12 steps. So it's a 12-step program. 12 steps to becoming a confident speaker. And by the way, I was going to have my wife join me for this, but she's getting ready for a big trip, and so she's got a lot of prep to do. But my wife taught public speaking and speech communication. She was a high school teacher for many years when we were in Houston and lived in Texas. So she taught this, and she had a lot of experience with it during college and things like that. So a lot of great advice that she can share, and she's going to work with me to put together probably more than one course. I don't know how many courses it will be. Might end up being like 3 or 4 courses on the different aspects and facets of public speaking and being a confident speaker. So we're going to work together on that. We're going to put it together. We're going to offer it. And if you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, I have a way for you to sign up for free to indicate your interest if you want to find out about it. So if you are interested in becoming a more confident speaker, whether it's just for your life or it's for work or you have your own business, you want to get better at sales and talking with customers, you name it, we'll let you know when it's ready. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I call tuning your vocal instrument. So that's your voice. Your voice is an instrument. If you've ever listened to somebody who sings, a music artist, a performance artist, you know that a voice can be an amazing, beautiful instrument. And it can be used for just speaking as well, right? So it doesn't have to be used for singing. And most people, if you ask them, do you enjoy the sound of your voice? You probably don't. If you've ever had your voice recorded and heard it, you're like, wait a second. That doesn't sound like me. And I know I don't like it either. Unfortunately, I have to listen to my voice a lot because I do all these podcasts. I've been doing podcasting for 7-8 years now. And so I hear myself because I have to edit the podcast and I see it on videos. Oh boy. Yeah, I don't like it either. And there's been some research conducted by psychologists, Phil Holzman, Clyde Rousey, that there's a weird thing that you experience, an affective disturbance when you hear recording your own voice, right? So it's not only the difference in the expected sound, the frequency, but also what your voice is conveying. Because voices aren't just an unemotional sound, right? There is a lot being conveyed through what they call extra linguistic cues, and it reveals aspects of your personality that you probably can only hear once you hear a recording. Your anxiety level, if you're feeling sad, if you're angry, if you're being indecisive, if you're lacking confidence, you name it. And so we are often surprised and disappointed by how our voices sound. And one of the first things that you'll often notice is your voice sounds higher than you expect. Because we are normally hearing our voice not only through the sound waves in the air, through our ears, but also conducted through the bones of your head, your skull. So it's vibrating and resonating through your head, which sounds richer, it sounds lower. And so it does sound very different when you hear it. If you've ever heard your voice in a recording or in the old days on an answering machine. We also pick up those emotional cues, which is a disturbing thing as well. But you can train your instrument. You can make your voice sound fuller. You can make it more resonant. You can practice what they call belly breathing, right, through your diaphragm. So you're not breathing in the upper part of your chest like I was just talking about, right? Breathing through your nose and being nasal and having that tight chest and throat. And boy, oh boy, I get that when I get nervous, you know. I have to find a way to relax, to breathe more deeply into my diaphragm, to let my belly expand and speak from my diaphragm, right? And you have to find your natural pitch where your voice likes to play. Sometimes people try to speak too low and they're forcing it, or they try to speak too high, or it happens because they're nervous. And so you do want to practice, and you can do this. You can train your voice to be more resonant, and you can avoid that really tight nasal sounding voice when you're talking through your nose. And, you know, I'm kind of exaggerating, obviously, but it happens. And my voice is kind of weird right now because I'm recording this around 4:30 p.m. my time, and my voice gets tired throughout the day. I have found, and this is something you should experiment with, when does your voice sound the best? When is it clear and resonant and your voice isn't tired or scratchy or whatever it might be? I tend to have a much better speaking voice early in the morning. Not immediately when I get up, but a little bit after I get up and have a cup of coffee, wake up and relax a little bit. But before I have a meal, because food can throw me off. And I've discovered that too. I have a pretty negative reaction to dairy products, for example. If I have milk or cheese or whatever it might be, and then I'm speaking, well, I have to keep clearing my throat. I probably have an allergic reaction to dairy. Why is this important? Well, I'll tell you. When I was giving talks, if I was going to be up on stage at a conference, if I just had pizza before lunch and now my voice keeps kind of choking up and I have to keep clearing my throat, not good. That's not good. Or I'm going for a job interview, right? I'm going to be presenting to a group or talking with a hiring manager, and I just had a big glass of milk with breakfast and now I'm clearing my throat constantly. It even makes a difference like what I drink, you know. I love sparkling water, but yeah, guess what? That kind of builds up bubbles in your stomach and chest, and now you have to keep burping and things like that. That's terrible. You don't want to be doing that when you're trying to give a talk. So you can train yourself. I have trained myself. I have improved my voice over the years. I hope it's less tight and stressed and anxious than it used to be. My wife has an amazing voice. I think she's lucky, very natural, but she also knows how to use it as an instrument. She she speaks, she sings. And I remember when I first started dating her many, many years ago, and we would talk on the phone, and I was like, wow, she has such a gorgeous voice. She does. She really does. And she had left a message on my answering machine way back in the day. Dear youngsters, there were answering machines. Didn't have a cell phone or anything like that. I was at my apartment. I was like, oh, I have messages, and I hit play, and I had a friend with me, and she left a message for me. And my friend said, is that your girlfriend? And I was like, yeah. He said, oh my God, her voice. Yeah, she has a beautiful voice. And people react to it. People like it, So everybody has a range for their voice, and you can play with it, and you can tune the way your voice sounds and all kinds of stuff. And what's related to that, kind of the second step, is improving your vocal delivery, how you speak. So it's not your instrument, the pitch and all that kind of stuff, but your vocal tone, your rhythm, the volume, the pace. I remember during the training that I had, one woman was really quiet, and she thought she was being loud, and the instructor was like, louder. And she said, okay. And she tried to speak more loudly. He kept raising his hand. And he's like, louder, louder, louder. And she's like, I'm screaming. And she was literally just speaking like that. I'm screaming. He's like, no, you're not. And so you have to get outside yourself. You have to get feedback from other people. I'll talk about this, but it helps to record your voice. You can record video, which is probably the best. So you can see your nonverbal cues too. And you'll see how loud you are when you're speaking, and the pace of your speaking. When people get nervous, they tend to speak very quickly, and they go really fast, and they're trying to show how smart they are. And it's like, whoa, slow down. I had to teach myself that, definitely with this podcast. I have to slow down, and it's okay to use pauses. I learned that from the instructor too, is like, use pauses. It's okay to have silence, because he was buzzing us every time we used those verbal tics and filler words. We're like, like, and, right? All that stuff that you do. And he forced us to remove them. And he would buzz us every time we used it. And instead, we just used silence. We used a pause. And so we would ask a question, and instead of putting a verbal tic in or a filler word, he said, pause for 3 seconds, pause for 5 seconds. I started doing this when I was presenting on stage. It's extremely effective. And he said, pause until you see the audience getting restless. And it does. It builds tension. You ask a question, and you wait for the audience to kind of react to it, and you pause and you walk across the stage as you're looking at them, and then you move on to the next part of your talk. Very effective. So yeah, record yourself and find out what you're doing, work on your word choices. I had to do this for a lot of talks. It was like, there are some words, I don't know why, I would stumble over them every single time. No matter how much I practiced. And in normal conversation, I can use the word without stumbling, but on stage, when I'm a little nervous or whatever it might be, I would stumble over the word, right? I would stutter or whatever it might be. I'm like, I'm going to replace that word. It's okay to do that, right? Get rid of the word. If there's a word you're having trouble with, come up with a different word. One thing I also like to do is to find your vocal hero. Who has the voice and the vocal delivery and probably the vocal range that you are close to, that you would want to emulate, that if you could speak like them, it'd be like, oh, wow, I would captivate the audience if I could speak like that. I've talked about this before. I like Lawrence Fishburne, great example. If you don't know Lawrence Fishburne, he was Morpheus in the Matrix movies. I love Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman, amazing actor. Love his voice. I don't have the cool accent. But he speaks very deliberately and calmly with really good resonance. He has an amazing voice. So I'll never be like those two, but I studied their vocal delivery and I was like, wow, that's impactful. That's powerful. Why is it? It's the way they say things, the way they pause, the speed, the delivery. So find your person. Who is it that if you were able to learn from them, you'd be amazed at how well you're speaking and the way you sound, and it would captivate people, right? Number 3, leveraging body language. So body language is a big one. Not so much on a podcast, right? But on stage, in a meeting, on a Zoom call, if you're speaking in a video conference, it makes a difference in your vocal delivery and your instrument. Your voice sounds very different when you're standing versus sitting and then compressing your diaphragm. And that makes a huge difference. That's why when I used to present, even if I could sit, I would stand up. I would stand up in the meeting room. I'd go to the whiteboard. I'd walk the room and talk and use body language and movement, practicing very specific arm motions and hand gestures. My media training coach taught me some stuff. They're like, hey, if you do this, it's threatening or it seems nervous. But if you do this, it captivates the audience. It draws their attention to something on the slides that you're showing. It's welcoming. It's expansive. You're showing motion. You're showing growth. You're showing energy. Your facial expressions. A lot of us are not aware of the face we're making. There's some memes and jokes about that. It's like, oh, did my face just say that out loud, right? I know I have them. I had some employees when I was, managing that had them and probably were not aware. They had some tells. One person always would have this flash of disgust go across their face when they didn't like what was being said in the meeting. And I don't think they were even aware they were doing it, but everybody else could see it. And they're like, what's the problem? You don't like this proposal? He's like, oh, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. A big part of this body language, hard for some of us. Eye contact. Oh boy, eye contact. I could do an entire course on eye contact. And it is challenging. It's definitely challenging. Some folks that are on the spectrum, that's really hard. Introverts like myself, it's hard. And there's the right amount of eye contact and there's too much eye contact. There's some research on this. It's really powerful. How you do the eye contact and who you make eye contact with in the audience makes a huge difference. The next part of the lesson, next step, is about conquering your fear. So I started talking about fear. A lot of people have a fear of public speaking. Very real, very real. Significant percentage of the population has this. And social anxiety plays a huge role, right? We don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look silly in front of other people. We don't want to make mistakes. But the funny thing is, being human, it helps you. It helps people connect with you. There is something in social psychology called the pratfall effect. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a tendency for your appeal with other people, this interpersonal appeal. It changes in a good way after you make a mistake. And that it depends on their perceived competence of you. Like, are you competent? So if you are giving a talk, if you're on stage, if you're presenting, you've already been perceived as competent. There's a reason you're speaking. There's a reason you're up on stage. People are giving you the assumption that this person's competent. They're teaching us something. They know what they're talking about. They wouldn't be here if they weren't. So mistakes will endear you to the audience. It's okay to be human, and it's okay to admit it. The other big part of conquering fear, training, I mentioned this, right? I had a lot of training. It helps. It really helps. Gives you a lot of strategies and techniques to kind of treat it like a method instead of feeling like you're swimming in deep water. The big thing I learned, presenting is so different than networking and socializing. So very different. And I had to lump them together. And it's not. It's not. It's very different. As an introvert, being on stage and teaching something or presenting something without interruption, without trying to get people to listen to you, without competing with the extroverts in the room, very different. Very, very different. I also engaged in some desensitization. I did some counter conditioning in a very strange way. I've talked about this before, but if you don't know me, you don't know the story. Karaoke. Karaoke. I spent some time in China. So I moved to China for a few months, lived in Shanghai when I was working for eBay. And boy, the team really wanted to go to karaoke every week. We went out every week. It is mortifying to get up in front of a team you don't even know in a country you're not familiar with and sing karaoke. But you do it because everybody's doing it. Maybe the alcohol helped a little bit, but yeah. I got used to it, and I actually fell in love with karaoke too. I don't know, because it's hard to tell from your inside of yourself. Am I a good singer? I don't know, but I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And once I had done that, I was like, speaking's so easy. I'm not trying to sing karaoke in a crowded bar in front of dozens or hundreds of people in another country. It's not so bad. So yeah, that helped. Preparation helps, right? Being really prepared helps you conquer your fear. I found that creating a stage persona helped. It's not me on stage. It's somebody who loves public speaking. It's an extrovert. It's somebody who likes to make the audience laugh. It's somebody who enjoys dramatic pauses, loves making eye contact. I created a persona because it's performance. Public speaking is a performance. Doing job interviews, it's a performance. I wish more people understood that. Let's see. I know we're almost out of time. Calming your nerves, because even if you do overcome your fear and all that kind of stuff and you prepare, everybody gets nerves. Tony Robbins still gets nerves. He gets the jitters before he goes on stage. So a few things I tried. One, I learned to avoid what they call the green room. So there's what they call the green room, which all the speakers at a conference and everybody's going to be up on stage. They're all in the room. And there's just a lot of weird energy. There's a lot of nervous energy there, but there's also people who don't care. And so you're like, wow, they're not even nervous and they're joking around and laughing. Why am I nervous? I don't know. The combination of it all just did not work for me. So I had to get out of there. I found that walking around outside the venue helped. I've done it here. I do a lot of work from home on Zoom. I will go outside my house and walk around the house and kind of walk around trees and get my nerves calmed down, and then I'll come back in and present over the camera. Physical activity helps. So there's a reason, if you have a dog, or if you ever had a dog or a friend has a dog, dogs shake to get rid of nervous energy. If you ever see a dog shaking when they're not wet, they're nervous, and shaking dispels the nervous energy. So it helps with humans too. That's what Tony Robbins does. He jumps on a little trampoline, mini trampoline. So shaking, jumping, I would walk and I'd run up the stairs and get myself kind of physically amped up. Deep, calming breaths. So instead of doing shallow, nervous, anxious breathing and high up in your chest, deep diaphragm breathing. Apollo Ono, Olympic skater, he would yawn before an event. That's how he calmed himself down. And I tried that, and it works. It works. I force myself to yawn before a stressful event, and it tricks my body into thinking, you're so calm. You're so bored with this because it's so easy. You're yawning. I don't know. Increases oxygen flow, makes you feel calmer. It works. I also found that focusing on the message helps. Instead of being inwardly focused on myself, because it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about the message. It's about the audience. You're really just trying to hand this valuable message to people who need it. They need to hear it. You're teaching them something. You're sharing something that's going to change their lives. Whatever it might be. And it's about that message. It's not about you. And then, there's a few more steps. Mastering the message. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into mastering the message and rehearsing. And I have talked about this before. Nancy Duarte, who's a TED speaker, really excellent presenter. She said you should rehearse at least 1 hour per minute of your presentation. That's insane, isn't it? So if you're doing a 20-minute talk, you probably should rehearse for 20 hours. I did. I had to give like an hour-long talk. I've talked about this when I spoke pre-COVID at a conference in Australia. It was like an hour-long talk, and I rehearsed for like 60 hours. 60 hours over the previous 2 to 3 months. Yeah, it helps. It really helps. Another step about how to present with confidence. So how to be confident presenting, responding to questions, dealing with hecklers, which it does happen. How to do storytelling, connecting with people. Storytelling is so magical. Embracing your humanity. I talked about this, but there's some things you can do to demonstrate humility, to have self-deprecating humor. Works really well. Practicing, as I just mentioned, the things you can do. Most importantly, don't memorize. Do not memorize your talk. That is, even if you succeed, it's hard to memorize a 60-minute talk. It's going to sound robotic. It's going to sound pretty fake. You want to practice, but practice so much that you can improvise, right? And I talk a lot about that. How to build rapport with your audience. There's things you can do in the moment. There's things you can do ahead of time, but things like finding the friendly fans in the audience, the people who are smiling and nodding, make eye contact with them. It's going to help your confidence. It's going to help you build rapport. And then finally, in the end, just learning to love it. Learning to love it. As I said, I'm an introvert. I really am. I really am. I would disappear into the woods and probably never see people again if I could. But hey, the world doesn't work that way. And that's how I recharge. After I give a talk, like I spoke at a conference, man, it drains me for days. I have to be alone. I disappear. Every time. But I noticed that it's really powerful. It is really powerful. And if you're a job seeker, if you're trying to be noticed and get promoted, get noticed in your industry, there is nothing like public speaking, being on a panel, speaking at meetings, whatever. Because as you've noticed, if you go to a networking event or you're in a meeting or you're at a cocktail party or even dating or going to an event, going to a bar, whatever, the extroverts get all the attention. They're loud, they're funny, they hog the spotlight, everybody's circled around the extroverts. I never could break into that circle as an introvert. It just wasn't me. I just couldn't do it. And then I discovered public speaking. And so I get to be on stage and I get to share my message. And I practice and rehearse so I feel like I know what I'm talking about. I can deliver it well. And everybody's listening and everybody is connecting with me afterwards and everybody's following me. It worked wonders for my career. It really did. And it will work wonders for your life too. It's really good. So I know I kind of had to rush through that last part, but ran out of time. If you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, this is How to Speak with Confidence, issue number 94. And I have just a very short kind of poll. It says, are you interested in the courses that we're going to develop to become a more confident speaker? And you can say yes or no. Let us gauge the interest in this and how much we should develop it. And sign up to be notified. You can join the newsletter for free so that you'll find out when it's released. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I know it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot with my career. It helped me a lot with my business, what I've done to become a solopreneur. And it's helped me with my life. It really has. It's made a huge difference. So I hope you'll check it out and would love to see you in the course. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with pursuing the life of your dreams so you can be happier, healthier, and more fulfilled.